Anambra identifies as light of the nation, but it doesn't always show this light in the area of solid waste management. At every turn one takes, there is always a sore reminder that more could be done in the area of solid waste management.
Biko na ina wuzukwa onu batala ayo se yemaka na ivia oweziela isi ekite wume n'ebe and ebe aka ina akpata ihe aije azu ụmụazị bata na ayo se yemaka ma ndị gọọmenti ma ndị gọvanọ ma ndị na-azọ ọchịchị onwere ọchịchị ọzọ ba ya acha na bụlọ anya bụ ozi aya na-azị ekute ume bata na ayo se yemaka ka anyị na-anwụ anwụ n'ihe nwere ihe unu.
As citizens point to government ineffectiveness, experts say prevalent mindset and certain structural deficiencies contribute to the problem.
In Anambra State, we really have issue waste management. Our government tried so much, providing enabling environment, provided mobilities, employed people to be taking care of the waste. But the fundamental problem we have is our culture.
We don't dispose our waste properly. People are so fond of indiscriminately disposing their waste. Dump it intentionally into the drainage system when the rain is falling. That's one. Two, when people take something, don't have all these small receptacles along the streets. If you go to Calabar, it's there. All the small receptacles. Receptacles. If you finish taking pure water, you put it inside there. We don't have it here. Somewhere like, I don't know, junction, all this, you should be there. Because we don't have it, people will tend to drop these things along the streets. And once rain falls, or even wind blows, all these things ends into the drainage system. This has a way of blocking the entire drainage system. And if the system is blocked, that will overflow. And it will erode the roads, and that's it.
So we take advantage of the gullies, that's erosion. Once any erosion, instead of controlling the erosion sites, what we do in Anambra is it becomes a refuse dump.
In Ekoka, and indeed in a significant stretch of 6th Avenue, Oka, in Oka South local government area of the state, citizens could be seen literally dumping their waste along the road. This is brazenly done during the day and also at night. In the morning, agents of Anambra State Waste Management Authority, ASWAMA, could be seen picking up these trashes. As they do this, road users are held up in the ensuing traffic congestion. Aswama says it used to pick up these trashes at night. It however stopped because the safety of its night duty staff could no longer be guaranteed. From reported incidences of rape to stabbing to harassment of staff and vandalization of the equipment, night duty deployment of waste disposal agents has become as dangerous as it could get in Anambra State. Security agencies are stretched to the limit. It is therefore not surprising that deploying security assets to guard night duty waste evacuators is not a considered policy option. As it stands now, until unruly citizens are stopped from harassing night duty waste evacuators, the general public may have to keep enduring the inconveniences of broad daylight waste evacuation.
We should be mindful of the environment. in the environmental palace, we have what we call NIMBY, not in my backyard, NIMBY. And when you throw that waste off, because you don't reside around here, you feel it will not impact on me. Just because it's not in your backyard does not mean it will not affect you somehow. Climate change is there. All of this, our activities impact on the climate, and whether we like it or not, we will have grounds of the complaints of the climate.
Solid waste management has been a challenge in Anambra State. I understand the state spends about 1.5 billion naira in managing waste, yet it's inefficient, especially during the rainy season. When the rain comes in, a stinking smell, it pours into the drainage, it blocks water channel, it makes the flooding even more complicated, because once the water channel is blocked, the flooding paths are forced to go outside of the road. And you find people struggling, especially school kids during the rainy season, trying to navigate all of this. And it's a challenge that must be addressed.
Solid waste management is an issue that everybody needs to tackle, especially the part of government to, because of it's capital intensive, government needs to dive into it.
Solid waste management is obviously a problem in Anambra State. So why has the government not found ways to manage it better?
Waste management generally faces the challenge of poor infrastructure, waste management infrastructure. And what we need by waste management infrastructure, basically, like I was beginning to explain when you arrived, first, very key, is the dump site. That is the final point of disposing the waste. The dump site, where everything gathers. We have dump site in Oka, we have 2 other dump sites in Onitsha, we have an Nnewi, and then we have some in Aguata. All right. When these dump sites are not functional across all seasons, it means you cannot get to tip. And so when you are not able to tip, it means you're not able to go back to pick. The dump site is a very critical factor in waste management, and so it needs to be maintained. Not just as per pushing waste to make sure that waste gets inside. Make sure that access route to the dump site are functional. It does not break down, because if it breaks down and you don't repair it during the rainy season, vehicles will get there and they will break down and they will block they will block access into the dump site. So that's why the access roads into the dump sites are not quite functional. And then there are times when the rain comes when you get portions of the dump flooded. And so when they are flooded, the garbage moving trucks cannot go beneath them to get right inside there to tip, and that encourages, you hear us saying that the dump site is filled. But if they are regularly addressed, periodically, like every quarter, we make sure that there is maintenance so that accessibility will be there all through the seasons. And we're also saying that in this generation and time, we shouldn't be talking about dump sites, we should be talking about sanitary landfills. The difference is that dump site, everything gathers at the dump site and it is dumped there, and no further processing and recycling takes place. Now, when we talk of landfills, then you have engineered, well-constructed facilities that allows for instance, gasification, separation of waste machinery that separates waste into different kinds. Then it will also provide for reuse. It will enhance reduction of waste in a location, and then will also have materials for recycling. So very, very key is functional dump sites and progression to landfills. Then, because largely we still operate communal dumping, you also have to key in the factor of having functional waste bins, the very big ones, around the market areas, in locations that are densely populated and where physical planning is poor, that the residents cannot be accessed. So we should be thinking of having big waste collection facilities, waste management facilities, which we call bins, in those locations. And because of combustion, they rust, they decay. So we need to have systems where we replace them. And then in other corridors where like government facilities, offices and banks and things like that, we should be thinking of receptacles, So these are waste management infrastructure. Well, we are not also forgetting what you just observed, having the proper vehicles for waste evacuation. So those are the challenges we have.
In proper development settings and planning, solid waste management should be a private sector responsibility, but we have to understand our realities, that we're coming from a very underdeveloped place and we're trying to transition. So we have to, of course, understand that government will take care of some part of this responsibility and then make a plan to really transition this into a full-scale private sector business. It's a business in most climes, and it shouldn't be different here. But government needs to ensure the efficiency in how it's done. For example, you need to establish, maybe make a policy that makes sure that some institutions, for example, universities, are epicenters of waste segregation. So when you come into a university, you see that waste are segregated into organic waste, plastic waste that are recyclable, glasses, paper waste. And this will make it easier for waste collection, and also to be able to do recycling, do the whole circular economy phase of waste management. The way our waste is currently managed, dumping into the landfills, dumping it into the water channels, no treatment, it's just reckless and doesn't add any value. There's a lot of value to be driven from solid waste if well managed, and this is an economy on itself. For a country that is having youth unemployment challenges, this is a critical area that can be harnessed. And in looking for who would do this job, it's important that the government recruits companies or individuals who will deliver the job. It's not a sector that requires just anybody for political compensation. It has to be people who understand what the job requires and how to deliver it.
Aswama is in shambles. There's nothing like Aswama again, in fact. Aswama is Anambra State Waste Management Authority. Now, from Anambra State Waste Management, it turned to Oka Waste Management Authority. From Oka now, it's like Ifite Waste Management Authority. So they are no more in charge. That is deterioration. That is where government is failing. Everybody wants, give me the site so that I can take money and retire. Take that retirement. You won't even do the work. If you go outside, the entire place is littered with waste. So these are the things. I keep saying, government has a major role to play. Political will is important. That's why I said God will help this man to come up with, to be a little bit fair.
It would be good to have a transparent system of recruitment that really brings in the best people to manage this and make it an economy on its own. Establish some best practices, and institutions of government should lead by example in trying to establish these practices.
These political challenges are not noticed on the side of government alone.
Very key in our process, in our system here, is liaison with local administrative structures. And our experience all the time is, even at that level, politics, who controls this force? Like the Obosi case you just mentioned, many of the residents' associations, they are in court. This administration refuses to hand over to this administration, and so they are not paying, because some of those areas are under the class of contractors we call pay direct contractors, in the sense that they go to premises to collect waste and get paid right at source. Do you get it? So when eventually their payments do not come, they begin to fail. And then because the local administrative structure is in politics, they are at quarrels with one another, the waste management seems to break down in such locations. However, we cannot engage in proper waste management without relating to people who live within a neighborhood. So administering waste management, waste evacuation through those local structures is a key project in our 2022 draft activities. Yes. My advice is first to plead to people to understand now effective waste management is a collective responsibility. It starts with you as an individual to manage your waste at home before it leaves your home. In other words, to package your waste, make sure that you have it contained in the proper bag, sack, that it does not throw away, and to make sure that when it leaves your home, it ends at a designated litter point, not the gutters, not the drainages, not a fallow land somewhere, but just make sure that you get there. And when you get there, please make sure that you drop it at the designated location. Don't just stay in your car and fling it. Take your time. It's coming from your home, and if you don't treat it properly, it's going to affect you. It's hazardous to your health and to everybody's health. So first of all, it's an individual responsibility. Secondly, yes, it is a collective responsibility where government, where communities have to do their own part. And then it is very, very essential that you understand that government spends a lot of money to get that work done. You need to contribute your part. Pay your sanitation levy. It's as simple as that. Pay your sanitation levy so that when government collects the whole of it, it will now be able to pay and perhaps subvent the waste management services in the state. It is not what you just leave for government, because you will also be affected. Have the right attitude to waste management and be a responsible citizen of the state by paying your financial obligations towards waste management.
If Anambra waste management effort leaves a lot to be desired, the next question is, what about its roads?
It's really a great concern to us and many other stakeholders that the situation of our roads really depreciated over time. We know that the government has been struggling to do so many things, but if we don't have good roads, it adversely affects movement, transportation of persons, people, and goods and services. The government of Anambra State has been given good priority to roads. It reflects in our budget. In fact, the budget of Anambra State shows that the road sector has the highest profile in terms of funding. Recently, the airports. After these two, then other sectors really come in.
If road infrastructure receives the kind of budgetary allocation it gets from the government year in, year out, why are Anambra roads, including the ones that were recently constructed, in varying states of disrepair?
Anambra State is erosion prone and it affects our roads. We have the geological formation of the soils in Anambra State is not very strong. Somehow it affects it, but that does not mean that when the road is properly constructed, it won't be there and fine. But then to an extent it contributes. More so, the way we build our houses, we don't channel the water runoff properly. In our houses, we pave every place, cover every place. The land surface is even covered, so the soil will not absorb the water, the runoff again. So it makes everything to surge along the streets, and this erodes a lot of places. And because it's not properly channeled, it will affect the roads. So that's one of it, the geology of the place.
It's unfortunate that in Anambra they don't consult professionals, especially when it comes to design and construction. It's more like just do it like Mr. A did his own. You discover that once you have low quality of construction of roads, it doesn't take time to wear off, especially when you do a road without drainage. You discover that most of the roads do not have drainages, so they are bound to wear off when the rain comes. We have drainage problem in the whole of Nigeria. Very sad because at the end of the day, there is nowhere you see water being channeled to from the drainage. Even those people in Onitsha have the same problem, even with the River Niger close to Onitsha. When there is heavy rainfall, you see the whole road and drainages are filled up with runoff water.
There is a particular government, let me not mention names, there was a particular tenure under one particular governor when roads were well constructed. The governor himself goes to inspect the roads. The roads he constructed, despite all these other factors, most of them are still intact, despite the fact it's some years now. But there is a particular tenure, a government that came, awarded so many contracts on roads, most times gave it to politicians, and they messed it up. Under that tenure, if the roads that were constructed, most of them, 80% of them have given way. The other ones, the other governor did is outliving that one. So you see that there's a problem. The problem is that the government has to mind the people they give roads to construct. Those construction should not be what one will use to settle politicians. It's not. You can give them other small contracts that require less skill, supplies and whatnot. And those of them that are amongst them, those of them that are into the construction, you give them and ensure that there is proper monitoring and supervision. Okay, so these are the problems. It's a big problem, it's complex, but I believe that any governor that comes in and wants to do it will do it and do it well, despite all the small things.